It is a testament to the writers when exposition and sci-fi, we'll say mumbo jumbo, doesn't feel like exposition and sci-fi mumbo jumbo. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Apologies out of the gate for two. One, I watched Wordless. I watched this episode 3 days ago, and life has just been life. So I haven't gotten a chance to actually do it. But two, it probably bothers me more than it does you. I don't know if you can hear it. I have a bit of a nasal infection head cold that I'm sort of dealing with right now. So my voice may not sound like it normally does. And for that, I apologize because it sounds disgusting to me, but I wanted to get this done. So yeah, bear with me. Episode 5 of Dark Matters here is called Wordless. Probably my favorite episode so far. And that's saying a lot because I don't think there's a bad episode in this, but this one just, it's the first time that I realized that this show is doing something that I think a lot of sci-fi shows sort of get in their own way at, is when they start doing exposition dumps or telling you how the world works or how the sci-fi is in it, it sometimes gets bogged down. It just gets such a slug. This is one of the few shows that happens to give you exposition, tells you how the sci-fi works, but the story still moves along. I never feel like I'm being talked at in this show or explained to in this show. It kind of just is happening naturally through the progression of the story. And kudos to the writers. I don't know if the book does that. I'd imagine maybe not, because the book has to be a little bit more flowery in how describing everything. But well done if it's the book writers or if it's the people who had adapted it for screen. Kudos, because this thing moves, and I'm still getting information of how this world works. We pick up at the end of the last with Jason Prime, now with the knowledge of they are the controls, trying to test it out and seeing what happens. And so Jason and Amanda continue their way through the corridor, and they're trying to clear their mind. They know that if they're the controls, they need to clear their mind to open the door so that they have a safe spot on the other side of the door. They even take it a step further and say, hey, maybe if we say the words out loud, maybe if we say words or what we want out loud, it will give us a better chance of having what we want on the other side of the door. My first thought was that maybe you want to try it once without the words, just to see before you start adding extra seasoning to how you go through about these doors. And turns out I was right, because when they open the door, they are hit with a world where the water has submerged the land, and water just starts floating in on them, and they are underwater and sort of overwhelmed with what's happening next. They eventually are able to sort of get through to another door, get to another box, close the door, and sort of get away from that world. But it is a lot. It's at that point that Amanda says, hey, I know what you verbally said. I know you said you're looking for this and this and this, but what were you actually feeling? Because I feel like the door or whatever we're doing may have felt what you felt more than what you verbally said. And at that point, Jason Prime says, yeah, I was feeling overwhelmed. And I opened the door, even though I said something different verbally. So clearly, this doesn't go by our words. It's the episode title, Wordless. Doesn't matter what you say. It goes by how you're actually feeling. Get more on that as it goes along, but it is more what you are feeling, almost like a mood ring. It opens the door like a mood ring, sort of. And we learn that your subconscious and all of that sort of plays a part in this. But yeah, it's at this point that Amanda says, we can't lie to these doors. There's no pulling a fast one on them. Like sometimes when you think you can talk yourself into a big game, I can talk myself into this emotion. I can talk myself into feeling this way. You can't do that here. And so we need to take a moment, take a pause, and sort of reassess and clear our brains, clear our minds so that we are in the best even keeled situation before we start opening up the next door, because we can't just keep burning through these vials. We need to know what it is that we're doing. Because they are soaking wet and clothes are drenched, it's at this point that they start taking off their clothes to sort of dry those clothes off. This is the point where I got to say, there's a world where a Jason starts digging and falling in love with an Amanda. It is not hard to say that the two of them have chemistry in a world. So I think putting themselves in various realms of undress um, is going to start causing some wires to be crossed about how the feelings are, and because they're just connected to each other, they're the only two who sort of know what it is they're going through. So I am a bit concerned, more so for Amanda, because I think Jason Prime has a clear directive. I need to get back to Daniela, but Amanda Prime is going to feels like she's going to get the shaft from another Jason down the line, even though I think they may start having some connection. Not sure, but it seems like it's on the horizon. But what they started discussing was their family history. And Amanda started going over hers and about her mother, how her mother suffers from bipolar issues and whatnot. And Jason's like, started going over his history and was like, yeah, I have issues with my parents and being abandoned and all of this stuff. And Amanda's like, yeah, I know your history. And Jason's like, oh, that's kind of freaky. Like his Jason and his Jason, with the point of which they split, the history stayed the same. So she is fully aware of his history. She does say that it's kind of sad and unfortunate that you don't know mine, because I've gone over all of this with you before. They start discussing the people who went into the box before Jason number two, and she says like there was a woman, Blair, who went in first, then Jason, and then they had a couple of volunteers, Sabone and Alex, I think were their names. And Jason just says, well, perhaps they have found a world where they have found complete and total happiness. They found their dream worlds. They end up falling asleep. When they wake up, they are out of the corridor. They are in a box. And so they don't really know what they dreamt about. And it's an interesting situation. They feel like, yes, we've even killed ourselves, but they don't know exactly what they took into the sleep or what the dreams were dealing with. But they don't have a choice. They don't want to test a vial and waste a vial when this could be the good spot or a good door. So they venture out into the door. Jason Prime and Amanda end up in a lab that looks a lot like the lab that they originally left from, but it seems abandoned, or at least without power. It seems like they had gone into some sort of an emergency shutdown, and so they're hungry. Like that's their biggest thing. And so they're like, well, let's at least go look for food and then return to the box, because this world clearly isn't what we need. Um, the commissary is locked, so they try to get in the commissary. It's locked, and they try to get the elevator, and there needs to be a power generator to help them. Some type of code is blocking anything from going out and anything from coming in. And so they decide that we should probably go back to their box. Before they do, they run into a room where they see that a person has been completely just eviscerated, their skin and bones. Some type of parasite clearly has bitten and had their way with them. As they try to make their way back to the box, it is blocked off, and um, Blair from the world that Amanda is from, we'll say Blair 2, makes herself present. And it's the Blair, she's been in this for a while. She's been here for months, and she's a bit broken, disheveled. She's happy to see that Amanda, but she's of a world where her brain is sort of at its wit's end. Jason and Amanda catch Blair up onto what sort of has happened about her, Jason, and him, and so on and so forth. He gives a bit of a tidbit about the Blair Prime, the Blair that's from his world, and there's some similarities there, and kind of is like, oh, all right, cool. Blair was wondering how they found her. Like they don't know how they. She wants to know how they got to her. And it's at that point that Amanda says, well, before we fell asleep, I was thinking about you. I was discussing you. So this perhaps led us to you. And when I went to sleep, deep sleep, this is where it put us. Blair says, look, well, I've been here for 3 months and there's no power. And she sort of shows her, when I got the generator back on, a video came with it and showed this parasitic like bug slash fly that is basically taking over this world. It's a desolate world. There's minimal amounts of food, but it is what she is. She has chosen to live here. And Amanda's kind of like, well, you still have vials and you still can get in the box. Why haven't you chosen to go anywhere else? And she is just completely freaked out about what could be the next stop. She's like, nah, I'm not doing that again. I'm not testing this out again. I'm not trying this again. this is where I'm going to be because I know what this is and I figured out this world. I'm not stepping in that box again to another unknown. We hear the click sound, which is the cue, which I just noticed in this episode, by the way. I wasn't fully paying attention, but the click cue, which signals that we are now going back to the Prime world. And Jason Chu and Leighton Prime are there discussing the rules of the box. Because Leighton's wondering, why do you need my money? And this is one of those exposition things that sort of comes up, clears up some things, but without bogging down the world. But Leighton's asking, why don't you need my money? Because in this, he's asking, well, you have the multiverse at your tips. You can just go to any world and just get money. And Jason Chu is kind of like, well, no, that's not possible because in each world, every multiverse tracks and has money marked in a different way. And if I came here with big bills that were not the same way as the world that I'm in, it's going to flag as counterfeit. And that's just going to be a setup. So that immediately takes off the idea of like, hey, just go to every world and collect money. And Bitcoin doesn't transfer from world to world, so that wouldn't even pop. So like, yeah, it's just kind of like, nope, you can only use the money that you sort of have in your world. Jason 2 sort of just hits home to Leighton like, hey, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because everything that you do down here needs to be calculated. Because this could be just a one-way trip for you through this box. Are you sure you want to give up everything that you have to sort of to do this? And Leighton's like, I'm all in. Let me do it. This Leighton says he's been taking shortcuts and he's been living by just the fact that he has money. He's used that to sort of get by and sort of has become complacent and bored, if you will. He's like, whatever this box is doing is more life and more fulfillment than anything that I've done in my life thus far. So I want a part of this box. Like I want in this box. And Jason sort of asks him like, well, how are you feeling? And Leighton says, I'm excited. And Jason's like, well, cool. You always have to be honest with yourself inside that box. Like, however, whatever you tell me verbally, kind of what we saw earlier, whatever you verbally tell me is irrelevant to how you are actually feeling. So when we go in this box, even though you're telling me you're excited, there may be other feelings that you're feeling. You need to be aware of them and sort of get them under control. And he's at that point where Leighton says, well, I'm also a little bit scared. Jason's like, well, I would be more concerned if you weren't. Back on Blair 2's world, Blair starts questioning Amanda and like, why are you following behind Jason Prime? Like, why aren't you doing this for yourself? Because at some point in time, he's going to venture off. If he gets back to his Daniela, you're going to be sort of the odd woman out. Like, what is your plan? Are you just going to follow behind him till he gets that? Like, the man is like, I don't know. I just needed him. I knew he needed to get out of where he was. And I kind of want to, she's not saying this, but she sort of wants to see where her Jason Prime is and why he just sort of dipped and disappeared on him. But Blair reminds her, like, you're worldless now. Like, if you keep following behind him, your world you can't go back to, and you don't really have a place in his because there's probably a version of you there. So you really don't have a world now. So what's your end game? And she says, the more that you hop around from world to world, multiverse to multiverse, you're going to start cracking. That's sort of what we see Blair is. She even says, like, I'm there already. I've cracked. But she's like, you've got to figure out what's the best world for you and stay there. Whether or not that's with him or not, you have to figure out what's best for you. Not what's best for Jason Prime. So at this point, that Amanda starts feeling a little guilt, and she says, therapist, I didn't prepare you enough for what's on the other side of this world. And Blair's like, cut all that shit out. Like, don't stop the guilt stuff. This has nothing to do with you. You did what you're supposed to do. In fact, I would be in far worse shape in this world if you didn't prep me for what I had to go through. Amanda offers her to come through the box with her one last time. And she's like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to stay here. I got what I need. Back on Prime, we see Jason Chu explaining to Leighton Prime sort of the rules and how you go about putting dark matter in the corridor, sort of explaining the rules to him over this. And so we get another exposition piece that just keeps the story going. Simple, they throw it away, but it's that you can only enter into world. There are an endless amount of worlds, but you can only access the worlds that you have some sort of adjacency to. And so you can only enter into a world where either you exist currently or did exist. Like your version may have died already, but you at some point in time, a version of you have sometime existed in that world. If you never existed in that world, you can't have access to that world. So that's a cool little another nugget that they just layer on top of everything else. And then we just keep it moving. Like, cool. I got that information. Let's move. Layton then also asks, like, what happens if the drug wears off when he's out of the box? And he's like, you'll still see the box. No matter where you're at, this box is in the same location in every world, which is, we've already sort of known that. But Layton is sort of getting that information, and they just double down on that in this episode. So at that point, Jason's like, well, what would you like to see? It's the world's kind of at your fingertips. And so they kind of start going from world to world to sort of test things out. It's basically sort of a training session that Jason Chu is giving Layton. Blair gives Amanda like a trip notebook of some of the trips that she's sort of taken and what her thoughts were at the time that she entered it, so she can sort of get a better read on the opening of the doors. But she tells her, like, hey, these doors, they read your fears, your stray thoughts, your subconscious. So whatever you think you may be clear, your subconscious may sort of dig in, and at some point in time, it's going to have an effect, and it's going to cause, even if everything else in what your thoughts is correct, that subconscious comes in and sort of just messes up the entire pattern of your door. So just be aware. They go back into the box, and Amanda feels like Blair's life is completely destroyed, and starts sort of throwing a little bit more shade on Jason Prime. She starts realizing that Jason Prime isn't as good of a person as she had imagined him to be or thought him to be. She's like, her Jason could have come back for them, because it's clear that he knows how to operate in this world. He could have come back for her or for Blair, but he's not. And it's clear that he's in this for something just for himself and not for science or for whatever this is. But she's like, he could have helped prevent so much pain. At this point, Jason Prime is kind of like, I get where he's coming from, and I can see how he became the person that he is. He figures that when Daniela became pregnant, he went home. Even though Daniela's like, I don't think we should have this baby. I don't think we want to have this. He went home and sort of had a long thought by himself about it. He put out all the pros to it, all the cons to it, and sort of thought about the best scenario. He, Jason Prime, decided, hey, Daniela, give me a shot. Let's get this marriage going. Let's get this baby going. Let's do this. That's when they split off. Jason 2, her Jason, went on with the science stuff. And he is now telling himself that, hey, did I make the right decision? Did I do everything correctly? So when both paths occurred, we're seeing that. And now he wants a shot at that path. And he thinks, hey, if I give this Jason a shot at that path, he doesn't necessarily feel like he's doing anything wrong. He's like, I'm just sort of giving us both an option. And he feels that, hey, you may want a shot at the money and all that stuff, and that may mean something to you. When you never really asked, you sort of just took. And so Jason says, well, I get where he's coming from, because if I gave up everything for the love of my life, I would do everything to get another shot at that said love. And so her Jason is sort of doing everything possible to prove that he made the right choice and say, hey, I can go and live this full life of the science and stuff, and then I can still go back and double back and get that love. Like, I can do both. That's where his brain sort of went. And it's messy. Jason said there's also a possibility that your Jason did this path, went all the way through it, and realized that it wasn't the right decision, or it wasn't worth the trade. And now he's trying to go back and sort of correct that, which is a big slap in the face to Amanda, because Amanda was the person that was there with Jason. And it seemed like the trigger was when her Jason saw Daniela. He's kind of like, yeah, I don't want this. I'm gonna dip out. And so it's sort of a slap in Amanda's face. So to Blair's point, she should sort of be looking out for herself, because no matter what, neither of these Jasons are going to put her first. Even if this Jason that she's with now, the Jason Primes, and them do start feeling for each other, he's going to drop her like a bad habit when Daniela comes around. So Layton Prime and Jason 2 finish out one of their training sessions, and Layton's like, let's do one more. I got another idea of where I want to go. And Jason's like, let's slow down. Let's wait a beat. We want to ration out our files. I want to give you like 10 or 11 of these. So I want to do at least one more training session with you before we call it, and I feel like you're good to go. And Layton's like, well, can't you just go get more vials? Can't you make more vials? And Jason's like, well, in theory, I could, but it's costly. It's a little dicey for me to do. I'm not a chemist, so I can't just make these, which is sort of a point to know. So he has to sort of do something out of the norm to get more vials. He's not really willing to do that until Layton puts up the offer, like, well, hold on. If you get me more vials, for every vial that you give me, I'll give you $1 million. Well, that just changes everything because in this world, Jason could just be done. He could live his life with Daniela, and money is all set and taken care of if he can get her more vials. So he starts ruminating over that. Jason Prime in the corridor starts using Blair's journal, not because of her notes, but she wants to try another option before going to doors. Instead of just verbally saying, he's like, well, let me write it down. A trick that I used to do at school when I was a teacher is say, hey, if you write things down or you write it, your brain becomes focused on it and it's not really letting in any of the stray thoughts or focus. So you're completely focused on this. So let's give that a shot. And they do. And then they open the door and they end up in an area that looks like the underground area where Jason 2 brought Jason Prime before the swap happened. Everything sort of right now sort of still pans out, looks the same. Jason Prime and Amanda sort of step up, go up the stairs and out the door, and everything again still looks the same. Except for there's one thing that for me I caught on to, but Jason is in such a rush to kind of like, hey, everything looks good. This looks like the best world that we can go in, but there are no people outside. It's very desolate, like to a point where that would cause concern, and it does. It's a red flag for Amanda. Amanda's like, we should go back into the bus. He's like, nah, gung ho. I found a car. Let's go. Let's go to my house. I think we should get there. Jason Prime makes it to his house in this world and opens the door and finds a Daniela. But she's looks in a bad way. She looks pretty sickly. Eyes are super, super open and black. She looks gaunt. Doesn't look in a good way. He goes in and he asks, where's Charlie? And Charlie's like, he's upstairs. They haven't come to get him yet, which implies that he's upstairs dead. And in this world, Jason has died. And so something is occurring that is just taking people out. And this is why the world looks as desolate as it does. Jason comes back out and a tank comes up the street. And these folks are in hazmat suits. And they quickly are like trying to test both Amanda and Jason's blood just to verify that they don't have whatever illness is. Basically, it's like a pandemic has occurred and has wiped out a great deal of the population. And so these folks approach them and say, hey, your wife, because there's a marker above the house that says this place has people who are sick. They're going to die. So we're either going to clean them out or move them in, but we're not going to enter into there. But she's like, you guys are clean, so I'd advise you to find somewhere else to go. The disease is not airborne. It travels through bodily fluids. So as long as you don't do anything like that, you're good to go. Jason asks, like, was there anything that I can do for her? And the one doctor in the hazmat says, I can give you these. These are 5 vials. They're not going to make her feel better, but it will help ease her pain and death easier. And there's also another test in here for you just to make sure. And they just dip out. They're like, cool, we're gone. And Amanda's like, don't go back in there. Like, that's not your Daniela. Let's just get back to the box and go see if we can try again. And that's not possible for Jason. Jason Prime has to go see this through. Now, some of this is probably because he hasn't seen his Daniela. And so he feels like, hey, I need to do something for a Daniela. But subconsciously, he knows that this isn't his wife, but still has to do everything possible because no matter what world, he doesn't want to see her in pain. So he goes back in. They have a chat. The photo, it's important because every world has had a version of this photo, either without the family or with the family. But the photo, wherever this world split off from Jason Prime's world, was after the photo that Daniela, Charlie, and them took at this one trip. That was a big piece of their life, and they sort of reminisce about that before he administered the drugs, and then they drive back to the box. It's a reckless thing. Again, what Blair said holds true here. This Jason wasn't thinking about Amanda because he's running as a one-man team. Like, hey, if I go here and give her this administration and I get sick and I can bring it back to you, I don't care. I'm doing what I want to do. And Amanda should have at this point started doing her own thing. Now, when they get back to the box, he has the other test. He tests himself and he's still negative. So that's at least the bright side of that. Jason's psyche is a little broken now because he has seen two Daniellas die. And he needs to get back to his. To that point, that man says, I know this is hard. Like, I get this is difficult, but we need to figure out why we were brought to this world. Like, something's off. And I know you said you wrote things down and you focused, but something subconsciously was still bugging you. And it seemed like it might have been like your greatest fear, which is something I think you had with your parents. It's not just losing your family, but losing your family to an illness. You just gave the whole world an illness, and so it directly affected them. And I think because we just talked about your mom passing of an illness the day before, I think it was somehow still ruminating in your subconscious. And it's at that point that Jason's kind of like, well, why in the world would I seek out a world like that? And Amanda's like, it's something that the subconscious just does. Like, why do spouses find spouses like their parents, or why do mothers of absent fathers look for a version of that for their mate? It doesn't make sense. It's not something that, like, it seems so easy, like, don't do this, but your body is basically saying, hey, I want a shot at fixing this. I want a shot at fixing and controlling this and taking that hurt away from them, the hurt that I felt with a child. So I'm sort of trying to do that with these people. Doesn't make sense on the surface level at all, but your subconscious does sort of its own thing. And so when you talked about this, it brought that back up. I think that world taught them, us, and then us as an audience a lot about how this box works. It's not, words don't matter. You can say whatever the hell you want to. It's still going to go off of what you are emotionally feeling. But even if you clear your brain as much as you think you can, whatever sort of last minute stray thought comes in, whatever last minute subconscious piece sort of comes in, whatever you still are kind of feeling, it's going to affect what is on the other side of that box. They go right back at it and they open up the door again and are in another world similar to where Jason switched. So it looks a lot like that. They go up the door, open up the door, and this time there's a civilization. It looks like people there. It looks a lot more vibrant than the desolate world that they were in before. So Amanda's kind of like, well, what if this is it? Like this, everything sort of seems to be on the up and up here. This is where the episode sort of does I'm going to let you believe one thing, but it does a 2 and 2 scene where Jason 2 goes to talk to Daniela in the bathroom. And then we sort of see Jason Prime and Amanda get to the house and sort of enter the door. Amanda stays outside. Jason Prime goes into the house and starts opening the house and goes up the stairs and towards the bathroom. So while they're having a conversation in the bathroom, Jason Prime is planning to go to that bathroom. So we as an audience are looking at 2 bathrooms and saying, hey, what if he goes to the same bathroom? Because Amanda brings up a point. What are you going to do if the other Jason's there? And so this is sort of the audience, us, well done, looking at like, well, is he going to see the other Jason? Like, what happens here? And what if Daniela sees both? Turns out it ain't. Jason 2 is talking to Daniela Prime, and he's just like, look, I know I made some mistakes. I know I made decisions without you. What can I do to make this right with you? And Daniela's like, just talk to me. Like, this is a big piece of what we do as a couple. We discuss things together. Daniela's like, I love you, and I want you to live the life that you want to live. So it's this point that sort of was the breaking point when Daniela got pregnant. She says, like, if you want to go and live your life, go ahead and do that. Then when you came back to me, you came back to me. And so now we're at this sort of point where it seems like you're trying to do your own thing again. And I want you to have that. But we've now sort of created this, and we need to have a discussion about that. And Jason was like, no, you are everywhere. Like, you are everything to me. I do love you. And it's like, well, it's not seeming like you do. I'm not in those decisions. She starts asking questions like, who's the investor? Who invested in this? You say you have money now. Who's the investor? It's like Leighton. Remember him? It's like, I do. Is it locked in? It's like, it's about 85% locked in. close to a deal with him. So that's what they're having. They're actually having a conversation, sort of break down the issues that they're having. Because I think Jason too has never had to have a partner. It seems like he was not close enough to Amanda to actually have these conversations about the day-to-day things. While that conversation is happening in the bathroom, Jason Prime is entering into a house, their house, and going up the steps and grabs a knife. Because he doesn't know if the other Jason's there, he grabs a knife. He goes into the bathroom, opens the door, and Daniela's there brushing his teeth. She opens the door, and that Daniela freaks the hell out. Immediately yells at Charlie, like, Charlie, go to the neighbor's house. Just run. He drops the knife because he's like, oh crap, I thought Jason might be here. I didn't want to freak you out. That Daniela then runs into the bedroom and gets on the phone and calls the police and says that my ex-husband is here. He's supposed to be in prison. Come get him. Well, shit, this isn't the right world at all. All of a sudden, Charlie comes in and starts pummeling his dad. And he gets up, starts backing out, puts his hands up, and Charlie's like, get out, get out, get out. I don't want everyone to see you again. It's at that point that Jason Prime says, whatever I did in this world, I'm sorry. He doesn't know what it is, but he wants them to know that he loves them, and he's sorry for whatever he did in this world. And it probably breaks his heart a little bit to know that he did something so damaging to them that this is the way that they react to any version of him. He leaves and meets Amanda and's like, cool, we got to go. We got to go now. And there's police coming up the street, and he's like, we got to go, but we can't go on public stuff because those police sirens are for me. She's like, what the hell? She's like, we can't use a bus. We can't use a cab. We need to get back to the box with the least amount of eyes that we possibly can. At that point, Daniela says, I think I have a way for us to get a car here. So Amanda goes to her home on this world and runs into her mother. Mother's bipolar. Remember that piece that still exists in this world. And so she drops the bucket, and her mother starts speaking in whatever her language is. And Daniela starts speaking back to her. It's at that point that Jason sees on the side that there's a memorial in the house of Amanda. In this world, Amanda is dead. And so it is very confusing what's going on in Amanda's mom's head right now, because she doesn't understand, or she doesn't make what this is. And so Jason shows her that and says, we need to leave. We need to leave now and do it as peacefully and calmly as you can, but we need to get up out of here. So Amanda talks to her in her language and then gives her pills and calmly leaves. And steal her car. And so in the car, Jason's like, well, what did you tell her? And she says, I told her that I'm in a good place. I'm okay. And that I'm happy. And that was a way to sort of give her hope, this version of her hope. So even if she is doing and reassuring the people that she loves in this world's life, similarly to how Jason did with sick Daniela and hers. The timing isn't as stringent, but it's still a way of saying, hey, I want to calm these people, even though they're not technically my people. They get in the car, they go off, steal her car, and head back to the box. Amanda asks, hey, aren't you a little curious as to what it is that you did in this world to end up in this situation? And he says, no, I am terrified of what I can do in this world, and I don't want to know. And Amanda's like, well, look at you. We're learning. Basically Jason 2 in the world that Jason 2 came from, the one that Amanda 2 came from, the one that Jason Prime was there and left from, Jason 2 comes back through the box door. There's a security guard watching and sees him come through. It's the spot where there's blood on the ground from the security officer who lost fingers. But he just makes a beeline to go grab 2 bags of more vials. He is going to go get some millions from Leighton Prime. And the security guard sees him and was like, hey, Jason, are you our Jason? And he's like, that's a weird question to ask. Yes. And she just gives him the rundown, like, well, I just want to let you know that when you went back through, Jason Prime, the other Jason went in there, Amanda went in there, and so did Leighton. Like, all of them went in there. And he's like, what the Okay, thanks for that heads up." She also asks him, "What's it like in there?" And he just immediately says, "It's hell." Um, it's interesting. I don't know if he's saying that because he doesn't want anybody else in there, or if he actually feels like this isn't worth the punishment that you have to put yourself through to finally get to your happiness. Um, but either way, he's like, nobody should be doing this. So he returns back to his to the Jason Prime's world where Leighton Prime is there. He meets him and he's kind of like, "Yo, real quick, why are you taking on trips without me? I'm supposed to be a part of that all the time." He says, "No worries. I just wanted to go locate 50 vials." And comes back and shows him I got 50 vials. So he's like, "Well, bet. I'm gonna get you some money and then I'm a couple more trainings and I'm off on my own." To that point that Leighton asks, "Well, once you give me the vials, what are you gonna do?" It's that point that he says, "I have to fill up this box. Don't worry. Doesn't affect you. Only in this world. I don't want anybody else coming here." So it it is unfortunate that, and it just shows you how decisions and options are always made. Leighton Prime told Jason too that, "Hey, if you need millions, I can give you some if you bring me more vials." Had that not occurred, Jason too would not have gone back to his prime world, his main world, to go get those extra vials. He would not have then given the information that Jason Prime, Amanda too, and Leighton too all went in after him. Now that he's a bit paranoid. He's going to seal up that door. So now it's a race against the clock, which is always the best sci-fi. It's a race against the clock for Jason Prime and Amanda too to get to that world, to figure out what it is they need to do, what they need to do with their subconscious, what they need to do to clear their brain enough to get to that world before it is sealed. So can they beat the training sessions to get back in there? It's going to be fascinating. I do think two things are going to happen. At some point in time, within the next couple episodes, Jason Prime and Amanda 2 are going to make out or do something. There's going to be feelings that are felt for each other. I also think that Daniela Prime is not stupid. And I think eventually she's going to start realizing that something is off, and I don't know what it is, but maybe I need to follow this Jason because something doesn't quite ring true with my Jason. Um, so she's going to pull at that string a little bit, and maybe to a point where it gets Jason 2 off of his rocker a little bit. He's not on his stance of defense and to lose a little bit of the handle that he has on everything. But this is my favorite episode because we got to go to two different worlds. We got to see two different versions of what Jason sort of becomes and sort of what your brain, the little tricks that your brain plays on you. You think everything's fine, but somewhere on that subconscious level, something is occurring that is causing you to think in a way that just messes up your day, or in this case, messes up your box. What did you guys think about the 5th episode of Dark Matter called Wordless? Go ahead and get thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcasts. We're there. Hopefully, the next time that I do this, whatever this head cold I have is gone. I won't sound like this. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.